And so last week, we spoke about the boy child. Well, most of the times the conversations are triggered by the events of the day. And that's why we say that is where the mistake is. Because sometimes we tend to sit pretty until, things go south is when we realize, oh, actually we were supposed to be talking about this, and for a moment we kept quiet about it. But all the same, what's important is that we get a chance to speak about the ills and the positives of the society. So yes, last week we were talking about how best do you get to grow this boy child, to being a man that is well shaped, a man who's a family man, a man who's a career person, a man who, when you look at them, you feel like, this is a person that is instrumental in the society. And so we looked at just what really gets us to a point whereby we do not do this right. Is it parenting? Is it the fact that we are always absent? Is it the fact that we, I don't know, what kind of society are we raising in the men that we are raising? Because, well, you bring up a man, in the good way, give them proper values, you can be rest assured that across we'll have some of these values, instigated in our very own young tucks, and together we make a better society. And so we are extending this conversation today, having had a fruitful one, and I mean due to public demand, then we want to extend it some, a notch further. And most of the times you'd hear parents complaining that, well, this baggage has really been laid upon us, and a lot of complaints and fingers pointed at us, and it's not always the case. So we really want to understand in this process of parenting, and when we talk about parenting, we know that it cuts across the society. It goes to that level of the teacher and all that. What are some of the things that we should do that will influence how we raise this boy child? And yes, no, that is not to say that we overlook what it is that should be done for the girl child, but we say we just make it a little bit special. And come last week, we all thought that, well, after that conversation, maybe nothing much is going to happen, nothing negative is going to happen. But again, that very week and coming to this week, so much has happened on the negative side. And this involves the boy child. And so we keep asking ourselves why and why. Why is it that even as we talk about it, nothing much seems to happen? And so we'll be talking about influencing factors on how we get to raise our boy child. The very same panel that I had last time of Dr. Julius and Dr. Jane Kimani. It's good to have you this morning. And we're looking forward to a great conversation. They are relationship experts. They're experts in so many things that are in line with social life, and we hope to get so much insights that will be helpful to us. And to this conversation where we left it at the other time, we said, well, parenting has a huge role in terms of getting the generational gaps, and a couple of things that we talked about. You can always grab that on our social media platforms. But as we get to continue this, as we get to take this a notch higher, maybe I should start on this random one. In most cases, you've been told, even as a woman, that you cannot run away from this abusive marriage simply because there are kids that are involved. And so when you run away, you deny them, that family unit, you deny them that other partner, that, a father figure. And so then that means they are going to be raised in a way that is not proper. Is there any level of truth in this statement?
I would say, I would compare it to a nation in chaos. For example, we have seen Sudan has been in chaos.
Yes.
We have seen Somalia in chaos. Now, saying that you will stay in that nation so that you can raise up your kids probably because they like the nation, then you are creating a probability that even those kids or those people who will be there will die there. So that's why we see people running into a nation to a safe haven so that they can have peace.
Right.
So in the same context of marriage, we cannot say that a woman has to stay in an abusive marriage so that the children can have a father. One of the things that you're doing is that you're creating sons and daughters who, number one, may do the same thing in their generation. They look at a situation and they say, we learned from our father that the only way to make a woman to behave, in quotes, is to then beat the woman or be violent to her.
Yeah.
The girl on the other side will look and say, okay, it is acceptable. If a man hits me, then I think that is okay. So I think that is a wrong narrative. I would say it is good to work out your marriage, but there are times when you look at a situation and you say, I would rather separate with this man because the values that will be passed on to this boy will be values of violence and chaos in the life of everybody else.
All right, then in that case, I'll ask the family unit, how then, how instrumental is it in, you know, being an influencing factor on how we raise the boy child in particular, and just what is this that we call a family unit?
Lovely. Okay, let me start by talking about what is a family unit.
Yes.
I'm going to talk about a traditional family unit. Traditionally, a family unit has got both parents and children.
Yes.
And if we extend it a bit more, a cultural tradition family unit has both parents, the society, and the immediate family in the nuclear.
Right.
Which are the grandparents and whoever. And where do we include the society? Take it or leave it, whether they're included in books or not, they are part of a traditional setup.
Yes.
Because a child belonged to the society. And that's why the society came to celebrate when their success. The society came to celebrate perhaps their marriages, their whatever, their rituals to the next level. Perhaps somebody has decided, you know what, I want to go abroad. The whole society would come and perhaps put in some money. So I would say that was then. But as we are growing, getting a bit more modernized, a bit more westernized, we are trimming off a lot from our family, and that is causing a lot of chaos because we are trimming off their parents, the immediate grandparents, and the society. And so we are leaving the family to you and your child, period. Actually, we've even trimmed off the teachers, who I believe should be part of the social system, the ecosystem. They should be part of that system of the family.
Right.
So when we trim them off completely, we discover that at the end of the day, you are left to your child, and God did not create it that way. So when we talk about the influencing factors from the family setup, I want to talk of the now family. The now family has got two things. We are either two parents or one. And it doesn't mean that because you're one, it will not be successful.
Okay.
We've had single parents or one parent, one home family parent, could be the mother only or the father. It's either way. And they've really raised a very successful young man. And when they trace back, they can say, yes, I had a bit of imbalance, but have become, and today I'm happy because mommy or daddy put a lot of effort into me being who I am.
Before you even finish or expound some more on that, let's face it. I don't know whether it's a myth or, you know, based on our day-to-day activities, we probably have witnessed this. There's some level of interference that comes along with the fact that, you know what, these parents are not working out things together. And so reality is that sometimes I would say there's some level of positivity that culminates from this based on how you raise this child, and they would look at you and say, you know what, having seen what has happened, I think I need to go out there and be the best for the sake of my mother, to make my mother proud, to make it easy for them. But, you know, a larger percentage probably paints a picture of how negative things and nasty things can get when, you know, it's only one parent that is actually raising this particular child. And maybe that's what informed what you said the other time, that sometimes it's good to find a father figure for this child. Sometimes it's good to find, well, a mother figure for this particular child if you are that one man who's raising them one-handedly.
Let me say this, Linda. There are so many people who have raised, women I would say, have raised good men. And it's because, one, when they were faced by the situation that came to them that they had either to separate or they had to raise their child on their own because a man refused to marry them, they took it positively. And you see, positivity is an energy that is passed on. That child can be able to see that you're actually doing a huge thing to raise them up. And sometimes the success has also come because of something in our default. We probably also reach out for help. Now you'll find women who reach out for help from responsible men are likely also to raise up very good boy child.
Right.
And one thing I want to say, and maybe I've said this before, and it's good for any woman to pay attention, and even a man, because this influences any boy that is being brought up. I said last time that 0 to 6 years, those are moments of connecting and bringing up a child who is emotionally stable.
Okay.
And that child much more connects with the mother because at that moment, the mother is the one who is like the caretaker at that level.
Right.
But from 6 to 14, I was doing a study and I discovered there is a hormone that is inside a boy that is called MIS, brain inhibiting substance. What it does is, number one, to kill anything that is woman in a boy. So you suddenly find a boy will begin to gravitate towards a father or any man. And that time a woman can feel rejected because they are wondering, why is the boy now interested in men, a boy, instead of the women, instead of women. And what do I do? What do you do at this particular time? As a woman, it is a time to look for responsible men who can be able to be in contact with this boy, because at this time he just wants to learn how to be a man. Something is driving him towards that direction. And if he falls into the hands of the wrong groups, then he'll end up either being in a gang because he's looking for any man figure who can influence him. He can either fall into good hands that can raise him up. So it is good to be so sensitive between the age of 6 to 14, that you make a deliberate effort as a woman to have men around that young man to nurture him. Even if he's not talking to him, just connecting with them, seeing what they do, and that will change a lot in the life of that child.
Wow, that's incredible. You know, sometimes when some of these conversations are ongoing, you can almost relate, you know, and now you get answers to some of the questions that you probably had, you know, as a mother. And most mothers will tell you after, you know, being close to them, and then they get to 6, and then all of a sudden, they run away from the kitchen, and now they're in the living room probably watching. And then you start asking yourself, is there something that I'm not doing right?
I know. I've been there. I've been there.
Yes.
And you almost feel like, what's wrong with these young ones?
Yes. You get to that point. And so in that case, I'd ask myself, age is one factor that we probably have seen. In this particular setup, you know, in the process of growing this child, maybe as you expound on your initial point, what are some of these factors, notable factors, that one needs to look at or to look into, you know, in terms of how they will influence this child positively and negatively? Yeah,
now, building on the family, I was coming up to this point. Children are born what you call tabula rasa, as clean as a slate. Their brains know nothing. They've got a brain that needs something to be written on. They acquire knowledge. They learn by imitation. So the immediate family and the environment that you expose them to while growing is now the writer, is the pen that writes into their brain who they need to become, what they need to believe, and the ethics they need to have, and the social moral standards that they need to keep. So this is where the family is so important. If they grew in an abusive family, as Dr. was saying, then they are taught, and it is ingrained in them, that the way out is violence. If they are perhaps exposed just to violent movies, and I usually tell parents, be very careful of what your children are watching in your absence. The cartoons that you expose them to as they are growing. At times it's just about guns and killing and everything. No. What do you ingrain and write in that clean slate? That when you're faced with a situation, go for a gun, go for a knife, go for these. What are the conversations around them while growing? Because that's the stage at which they become a person. Who do they become? Also be very careful about the person who is their minder, the house manager, the child, the person who is bringing up the child. What words do they speak to this child? At times they may not be the child, but they are abused with words. So anger begins to well up. And they learn, you know what? When you're annoying me, I also unleashed you some few words. So I think as a parent, it is up to us to decide and tell whoever takes care. Like for us, for example, we told the teachers of our children, when our children go wrong, punish them, use proper punitive measures, but not the wrong words. Don't write into their lives failure. Don't write into them that you are foolish, you're stupid, you didn't finish your homework. No, let the punitive measures be at least have positive results. All
right. And then I would want to believe that is on the environmental, or largely on the environmental perspective. There are a couple of other factors that probably one would look into: biological, interpersonal relationships. In a way, we've talked about the interpersonal relationships and how they relate with the people around them. You know, the early environmental and experiences that they get to have that probably tend to shape what it is that they become in future. Just how instrumental is this? And then how do you get to that point where you are alive to this, looking at the generational differences, you are alive to this, looking at the fact that there's probably not much time to do this, this, you are alive to this, looking at the fact that yes, there's you in their life, but there's also the world out there that carries along other people.
You see, one thing that I think even the creator, you know, when God created the world, I think he wrote and he spoke. And it means that the way to make sure that the environmental factor, there are good ones and there are bad ones.
Yes.
When we look at every situation that is happening, it is, as a parent, you make sure you create conversations. And you create conversations. I will say this, one of the things, boys don't learn when you face them direct.
Yeah.
Okay.
They tend not to. You'll find most boys are not so comfortable looking at faces.
Okay.
You'll find they will tend to have a conversation because that to them is like a confrontation. They tend to have a better conversation when you are side by side. And I say, if you're a single woman, have a conversation with your son when you're doing something together, probably in the kitchen, in the sitting room, side by side, and he will tend to listen.
Okay.
Secondly, boys learn better when they hear stories, things that you rate. So don't tell a guy just don't drink. Sit down with that, give him a story of a life of something that happened. It will remain in his mind much more than anything else. So when it comes to changing what is influencing those people, remember conversations. Have constant conversations and not long ones, because boys tend to lose their focus very easily.
Fast.
They'll be looking at this side, the next thing they want to go in the other direction. So have short conversations and let them be impactful. When they ask questions, and that is where sometimes as parents fail, even
we
men.
run away from the questions.
When you ask question, you tell that kid that's stupid. But you don't realize that most children, and I'm also saying as boys, they learn like when you go, you know, when you go to before we used to throw envelopes into the boxes or sliding something under the door.
Under the door.
It's like they open. That's the way their mind open. So when they ask questions, they're saying, this is a window of opportunity for you to teach me something. They may have asked about a car, but you probably want to teach them about how to relate with women. So that is a time to slip in what is important at that particular moment.
Okay.
So you have to be, as a parent, as a teacher, as anyone that is influencing a boy child outside there, you have to be so sensitive on the timings and when to deliver the right thing into their brains.
All right, as you are sensitive on this, Dr. Jane, the aspect of identity. And in most cases, we tend to get some of this information when we are way old. You know, you're being told, you know, you have to identify your purpose, you have to know what it is that you want in life. Sometimes they say, you know, that at an early and tender age, you probably do not want to bombard them with what it is that they can be in future. And so you're giving them time to grow. At what point do you incorporate values and factors that will influence how they get, you know, to get into that character and understand their identity and what it is that they want to be in future?
Lovely, a good question. You know, we're taught that children begin to show who they are from the age of 2 to 3. Now, talking about boys, you know, boys are wired for movement. Boys will not sit still, they won't. So they are wired for movement. In the essence of movement, you'll see what they're gravitating towards. And that's why we talk about intentional parenting. You will always observe what they're gravitating towards, because the maker wired everybody for their destiny. So, but at times we try to change the wiring and wire it ourselves to what we didn't become, and we want them to fulfill it for us. And that's why we fail. So I will say, like, for example, let me give an example for our son. While he was but very young, I would go to church, and after we were done with church, he would run to the keyboardist and start hitting on the keyboard. It was like 2 years. And so what did we do? We got a toy keyboard. He grew up from there. Now, you know, we took him to music school to learn keyboard. Right now, he's in the university, he's studying music. He's at the place of his strength. He's in the fullness of his joy. When you get a boy child from what they want, because we feel like we wanted you to be an engineer, I wanted to be called the mother of an engineer. No, it's not about you. It's about him. And many times we steal from them their joy. And when we steal from them their joy, there is a void and an emptiness. And with that emptiness, they fill with every vice. because they're doing it for you, not for them, but because there's something that has been snatched from their lives, suddenly there's a void that wants to fulfill something else. And that's why we begin to say, I don't know why, he's been a good boy, but he got to this level and now he has changed. He was about to choose his subjects in Form 2 and you insisted he has to do math, physics, chemistry, and this boy is looking at the physics teacher and he's wondering, exactly what are you discussing here? Because perhaps he's not wired for that. I want him to take the art subjects or the literatures and he's wired for science. I always say parents will always observe what their children gravitate towards. Another thing, listen to their conversation. A mistake we do as parents, we talk to them and we keep talking to them and we keep feeding them with information. And because boys are slow to speak, we need to understand that because of I think one day we'll teach about how they're wired, their brain is wired, because of the separation, their speech is low. It is slow. So they're not very quick to speak what they want to say. So especially as mothers, we get so impatient.
I know.
We're even finishing their sentences for them. And for them, it gets so frustrating and they swallow up a lot of anger and they feel like, I'll not talk to you again. So when you want them to talk, they've already discovered you're at a point of frustration. So we need to give them time to talk. And over time, periodically, ask them, what do you think? Because again, you know, it shifts with time. Listen to them, get their vision from them and help just nurture the vision. Just become, you know, like their caretaker. Nurture their vision, pamper their vision, direct them. Our ways is to direct them, but let them live their purpose, which is already ingrained inside of them.
Exposure. And in most cases, you will hear this, that, you know what, the exposure that one got, you know, got them to a world that was vast with so much. And then it was easier for them to literally identify that one thing that they want to do. And I mean, look around. These kids who've been exposed to, you know, the world out there, negatives, positives, and all that, most of the positives, in comparison to this one that has just lived with this particular cocoon, you tend to evidently see the difference. And sometimes as a parent, within this cocoon that you live in, or within this space that, you know, the heavens have decided to put you in, you tend to feel like, you know, I mean, this child will only pick what is within this place. And in most cases, that's why you're told as a dad, now you have to be very careful on what it is that you do. So if you're so much into music, this person is just going to focus on that, and that's all that will project coming out from him. And in real sense, sometimes it's not always what it is that they would execute best. So how then do you get themselves to that level where at least they will enjoy enough exposure for you to pinpoint that one thing that will interest them, as opposed to them going by what it is that they have seen the mother doing, or what it is that they have seen the father using. I mean, I'll tell you, 3/4 of the music I sing today is, and I enjoy so much, so it's because my dad used to love it, and so we could listen to probably reggae or country music. It is because my mom was so much into tarab, and so I got myself into tarab. Maybe I never had that chance to say that, you know, this is the kind of genre of music that I love and enjoy that.
Wow, that's interesting. You know, one thing I've realized, and I will say this because it's an experience that I had. We grew up where we're not exposed. The only game that you would play in that estate is either football or, you know, that kati.
Yes.
So even boys would play it because those were the only two games you'd play.
I know.
And so you realize there was so much limitation. But I remember one teacher, and I don't know whether he's still alive, but that teacher in Martin Luther was a wonderful teacher. He was called Mr. Mohoro.
Yes.
Mr. Mohoro would always come with a book and read to us stories when we were in class 4.
Okay.
He would throw our minds to South Africa. We would see the minds that we had never seen. He would take us to New York City through reading books. And he opened our minds to see possibilities.
Yes.
And I wish so many parents can also realize that they can throw their children into a world of imagination through the power of books.
Sometimes they want to go there very fast. I'll tell you this, every time now we have a conversation with my little boy, and he's like, you know, I really want to experience snow. I really want to experience snow. Snow itakuja siku gani, and all these things. And That is not the problem, because you find there are things that really are worth, and you'd love for them to get to know,
Yes.
but then they are taking you a little bit too fast, and this is not in existence. How do you handle that?
Now that is a place where, as a parent, you tell them this no cannot be found within our location.
Okay, so that's a
Number
learning
one,
process.
it will take a lot of money for us to go where the snow is.
Okay,
And
so you had
therefore,
to
I want us to work hard together.
Okay.
So that we can be able to make this money, and so that one day we can go to those places where the snow is.
Yeah.
So as a parent, you are like a policeman, you know, or the signboards that we have on the road. Sometimes they'll tell you there are cows crossing, so they tell you slow down. Others will tell you a very sharp corner. So we are the signboards that we are given to be to these children. We'll tell them slow down. This thing, you're going so fast.
Yeah.
There's a sharp bend around here. So I want you to see what is ahead, but at the same time realize that you cannot go fast towards that direction.
Okay.
So we can use books, we can use movies, and that is why it's so important. You know, nowadays we live, as Doctor was saying here, we leave our kids to watch anything. But when you sit down with our children, we are even able to pinpoint some issues. Like, that was not a good word. That was not a good gesture. So we need to change a few things here and there. And out of that, it becomes a learning experience. Up to today, I remember with our, for example, our son and daughter, we brought some movies from our days. You know, like the way you are saying, there are songs that you remember of the 80s.
Yes.
There were movies that we used to watch in the 80s, and I brought them to their world.
All right.
And they were able to experience the kind of life we lived. But somehow, along those movies, you are teaching them, you're telling them, by the way, what that guy did is not right.
Okay.
And they pick a few things from there. So we have so much material that we can use to shape the world of our boys. Yes.
All right, let's talk gender, which I think is also an influencing factor. And we talk a lot of identity crisis and all this. So all these things that we're talking about will probably shape one's identity. How then does gender come in to shape the identity and the growth of this particular person? Today we talk about the boy child, the guy child. That's purely everything to do with gender. But how then do we talk of this or have these conversations and, you know, still get these people holding their shoulders high, their head high, knowing that, well, in my own special gender, I am perfect, I am good, and this is what is expected of me. And I mean, even as it is expected of me, it is not like it's a must that this has to be achieved.
Yeah, the one thing I would like to talk especially to parents who've got boys and at whatever age, they need to make them understand that you need to have one competitor, and the competitor is yourself.
Okay.
Work at being the best that you can be. You know, boys are naturally competitive. All the men are wired for competition.
Yeah.
And as we keep saying, you observe two men driving. They don't know each other. Perhaps the car next looks like yours, or perhaps it's like both this around the same time, and one overtakes, and the other one will keep overtaking. Hamjuani.
You know, you're rushing to different directions.
Yes, there's a quiet competition because there's a hormone released in them, testosterone, that helps them to compete and achieve.
Okay.
Now comes a problem when you're bringing up a boy and a girl, and you've got a girl perhaps who is achieving more in a certain area than this boy who has a competitive hormone in them.
Yeah.
I always tell parents, let this boy be the boy that he is and never compare two children.
Okay.
Because what one can do doesn't mean that it is exactly what the other one should compete in. Everybody needs to be their own self. Help him to know himself. Nothing is more important than knowing where you've come from, who you are, and where you're going. Write it down with them. As Dr. said, be a post along the way.
Yeah.
Understand who you are wired to become. Understand your dreams, your visions, your hopes, and your aspirations. And at any point, if you do not achieve it to your expectation, the time is still there to make it up. Because at times we beat them down so much with words.
Yeah.
And that's why you find some of them don't even want to be men anymore. They'd rather wear the skirt. Yes. Why? Because they feel like you've given them such a high rating, and if they fall short of the rating, they're thrashed for that.
Okay.
So we need to understand they're not defined by academics only. A man is a man because he's a man. Period. They are not defined by any other success, as much as all this is very important. It is the icing on the cake. They're defined by the values that you have given them. They're defined by the words that you have spoken to them. They're defined by the vision that they have for their own lives. And keep that constantly alive.
Okay.
When that is alive, he has something to live for. I keep saying, give a boy something to live for. If you do not give him something to live for, and you nurture that to live for, then they live for themselves.
Okay.
And when they live for themselves, they become a mess.
Like it. Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is interesting. Again, back to the environment, I'd want to assume, or the society, that we've all unanimously agreed that it is not as active as it used to be back then. I remember I could get a spank from my neighbor because I have done a mistake today.
Yeah.
They can never even bother when they're looking at my... Well, I sometimes try to do that, but then on second thought, you know very well that this is likely to land you in trouble.
Yeah.
In the event that something bad happens to this kid, how are you getting yourself to that point where you'll explain, oh, she was doing this, and it wasn't proper, and I felt like I should come in and all that. But reality is that, again, our children are highly a result of what the environment, the society is like. They'll tell you many muislando damu. And you can literally see that in, even their physical appearance. They'll tell you mini mtu wa leafy suburbs, and it's evidently, portrayed in how they look, how they express themselves and everything. How then does it come in? And how then as a parent would you say, it's okay, this is Islando, this is what Islando is all about, but that does not mean it should be written all over your face. And that is not to say that Islando is bad in any way, yes. Or how do you bring out the best of Islando, yes.
In every environment.
Yes.
You know what? I've realized that we become what our environment also gives us. And now when we say that we will not interfere when we see a young man doing something wrong, then somebody else will interfere and they will bring that something wrong.
Bad, okay.
You get it? So you find there are boys who are joining gangs. Why? Because somebody said, I saw him like he was trying to talk to a few guys there, but I didn't feel like interfering.
Okay.
I didn't feel like having a conversation with them. So eventually these boys come back to the same neighborhood, terrorizing the entire neighborhood, and you're saying he's a bad guy, and you saw him when he was about to get into that gang. I have personally, as a man within the neighborhood that I live in, sometimes will interfere in conversation of young boys.
Okay.
And I will tell them what you're doing. Those songs that you're watching there, they are not good songs. And you are not reprimanding them, but you are having a conversation that will put soberness in their mind. Because again, something has happened where every time we think parenting is about shouting, it's about beating. Sometimes it's just having a conversation that when they see you, they kinda respect you. I remember during the COVID season, we agreed, she brought up the idea, because I have done taekwondo, why don't I get a few boys? And because I want to influence them, but I may not be able to influence them if I call them for a talk. But if I can capture what they like, and they begin to do that. And we began to do that, and I saw a big number of those young men totally changed, because as we are doing this game, I am injecting some conversation of what you're supposed to do as a young man. And I would suggest that every man, every woman, you need to play a role in those young men that you see. If they are doing drugs, please get into that place and tell them, you don't just tell them you not do this here. Tell them, ask them a question. Do you think what you're doing is right?
Okay.
And throw them into a moment where they can have a conversation with themselves, where they can analyze, they can weigh a few things here and there. But if we just walk away because you think the woman in their neighborhood will come shouting at you if you talk to their child, then I think we are also being somehow irresponsible and waiting for maybe a disaster to happen in the future.
I feel we should have this some more, but then again, time is not on our side. Before we close it, and so back then the spank was there. No question about it.
True.
And I used to say I hate my mom and I love my dad simply because the dad was not into spanking a lot. My mom was into it. There is no question about it.
We agree.
And as women, you really want, there's that urge. Sometimes you feel like, a spank would do better than just sitting this person down. And sometimes they even say they don't even listen to us more. But when the dad just says, action, they are getting into character and they're doing whatever it is that they're supposed to do right. If we are to make a comparison, which one works best? Sitting them down and just having this conversation, or the spank, honestly? I swear the road spoiled the child, remember?
I'm talking to such a traditional parent. who believes in the spank,
Yes.
that it shaped us to who we are today.
Yeah.
Even while growing, you know, those younger years, my mom never waited for my dad. My dad was not like your dad, very gentle. You know, we'll want to talk and just forget it, go eat and sleep.
Yeah.
But my mom, wait until the day leaves tomorrow. The eye now tells the whole story. We are back to yesterday.
Yes.
So I'll say this, there's an age at which a child
Yes.
will require discipline. But I say never use your hand, because your hands are meant for love.
Okay.
Never hit your child with your hand, because that hand is meant for comfort, especially a mother or even a father. Get a slipper or something and let them know before you have this conversation, because you've not done this twice. For now, I'm going to give you 1, 2. It is not meant to kill them. It will not, but just give them on the bum 1, 2, and they know the discomfort, because somehow that memory of the connection will tell them I should not go this direction.
Yeah.
But that should not be like dictatorial, that anytime you're wrong, pa, your bum, one, no. Have a conversation, but there's an age they'll not be able to understand. But at a certain age while growing, you don't need to beat your children.
Okay.
From the age of 5 years, that time they can hear and listen, and also you learn to be a reasoning parent. Another thing, never spank your child because you're angry, frustrated with him, and you're beating out the frustration from your heart. Because our parents used to do that. They would beat you until you're wondering, am I the reason?
Yeah.
Or was there something else?
happening?
Because at times we beat them with anger. We need not beat them. If there needs to be a punitive measure,
Yeah.
withdraw their rights. At a certain age, it works better by you withdrawing their rights. While you tell them at the age of 4, 5 going on, you've done these, yes, then I'll not give you what they like, perhaps an ice cream. Even at the age of 3, if they can listen to you, tell them, then I'll not give you your ice cream.
That is a good
And now they associate the pleasure of an ice cream has been denied because of what I did, then I've
rather not
learned
do it
better.
again.
But first of all, have a conversation before you can withdraw the right. At the end of the day, I've come to discover, I think if our parents knew, instead of so much fight, they'd also have learned to withdraw our rights. But did we have any?
Did you have any in the first place? Was there? All right, we close it at that. I will assume we've reached age 14.
Yes.
And so we've talked about raising this kid up until age 14.
Yes.
And probably there's need for us to expound it further on understanding. So after age 14, transitional processes, transitional crises that they witness, and they have nobody to speak to.
Yeah.
We probably should have this conversation some other time,
True.
expound it some more. And that we cross fingers that it should be next week. It was good having you, Dr. Jane Kimani and Dr. Julius Kimani. Thank you so much for the great insights. We're looking forward to more and more of these conversations because they're really instrumental, if at all. We have to shape a better, environment and a better generation in years to come. That's why we close it on a Morning Cafe. Thank you so much for your feedback. Again, time will not allow us to go through them. It's at 59 exactly. So we say kwaheri. See you again some other time. Keep sending them, and some of the questions that you have, we'll forward it to the specialist, and we'll get to answer them on the next session. My name is Linda Alenda. Bye-bye.